So my name is Heather Wokusch, and I'm a psychotherapist. I'm also an organizational development consultant, but I also am a person with lived experience with burnout. And I have I have dealt with burnout for literally years and years and years, and I tried everything, nothing worked. But this summer, I figured something out. And I'm really excited about it because it actually appears to be working. And so I'm just totally eager to share this information with you. Now, I'm going to tell you in advance, I'm not selling anything. There will be no sales pitch at the end. I'm just totally eager to share with you this information that has really, really helped me. There will be some free things that I will be giving away at the end, but no sales pitch. So anyway, if you have experienced burnout yourself, then probably you've done one of three things. Maybe you've gone online to try to find the symptoms, you have looked through the stages of burnout online, and probably you have looked under what are some of the treatments. Now, I also did all of that, and it just didn't work. But what we will do to start with is actually just to go through very, very briefly some of the stages and the symptoms. In detail, you can look online. There's literally 100 sites, but that information will help us in terms of what the actual solution is, or some of the things that have helped me in this regard. So basically, regarding burnout, there are usually considered to be 5 stages. The first stage is the honeymoon phase, and that's when maybe you've started a new project or something like that, and you're really excited, and there's dynamism, you're feeling optimistic. Yeah, sure, I pulled an all-nighter, but that's okay because I'm excited about what I'm doing. It's that kind of energy. Then the second phase is the onset of stress. And you're starting to feel a little bit kind of tired and drained. Maybe you're having sleeping challenges. You get angry easier, maybe. There can be some teeth grinding, issues going on. And at that phase, it's the onset of stress phase that often you will notice some heart palpitations coming in. And so that's that phase, a bit of concern. Now, the third phase is when the stress becomes chronic. And so you have all of the things of phase 2, but then you also have this feeling of just needing to withdraw. You're feeling detached. And it can be really hard to make decisions because your head is so fuzzy. And the interesting thing is that when you get to that point, when it becomes chronic, then a lot of times that's when the issues will develop regarding substance issues. Maybe you start drinking a bit more, maybe you start smoking more, maybe you're using other kinds of coping mechanisms. But ultimately that doesn't really help the health. So then after those 3 phases, then comes the 4th phase, which is burnout. And burnout is basically all of the stuff that came before, but multiplied by 10. And with this added component that if you've been there, then I'm sure you can identify this added component of just feeling like you need to escape. If you could beam up to the Starship Enterprise, you would do it. You have fantasies of going to Hawaii or just anything, just get me out of here. I can't deal with it. And it's in that 4th stage of the actual burnout that very unfortunately a lot of the suicidal ideation comes in. And so you really need to take this seriously. Then at the 5th stage, that's where burnout becomes habitual. And so it means that even if your environment changes, it doesn't matter, you're going to still take this burnout mentality with you. And what you'll find in that case is that it goes in cycles. I dealt with this for a long time. Maybe you're fine for a couple of months, and then it will peak because something happens. You go through burnout for a couple of days or something, you do some things, it decreases, and then later it'll come back. So those are the basic stages of burnout, and possibly you recognize some of the symptoms in there. Now, the interesting thing is that for many of us, because burnout is being called a shadow pandemic, because so many people are dealing with this right now. And for many of us, what we found is that the cycles became shorter, which means that we dealt with burnout more and more and more because the environment was just ultimately more stressful. So then at that point, maybe what you do is you go online and try to find, okay, so what are some of the treatments available? And inevitably, you're going to find just a list of things that usually include things like, okay, watch what you eat, what you drink, get a lot of sleep, manage your stress, whatever that means. My personal favorite is when they say, take a long holiday, take a month off. It's like, yeah, sure, And so what you'll find, and also, reevaluate your priorities. There's work and there's life, and they don't mix. But all of this kind of just loses it during the pandemic because our lives have changed and become a kind of burnout lifestyle. And so for me, what I found is over the summer, I was kind of, again, the cycles were becoming shorter, and I realized, the coping mechanisms that I had been using didn't work. And I wasn't about to take a month holiday. So what is the core of this? Why am I doing this? And how can I stop it? So I went on a personal journey, and then this culminated in October. I gave a TED Talk, and the TED Talk was focused on mental health in the pandemic. And in it, I looked at the collective level, but I also looked at the personal level. And in that journey, I came up with a bunch of distinctions that actually made a lot of sense. And it's these distinctions that I would like to share with you today. And so what I'm going to do next is I'm going to share my screen and talk you through part of this, and then we will come back together. And so here we go. I'm hoping that this works regarding screen share. Let me see. Okay. Actually, that's not working. So let us see. Okay, I'm going to try it, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. So we will see. Can I ask, what do you guys see right now? Do you see me, or do you see something else? Can somebody please type something into the chat? What do you see now? Hi from Brendan. Can you please tell me, what are you seeing right now? Do you see me, or do you see something? You see me. Thank you so much for letting me know that. Okay, so I think what we're going to do is, since this isn't working, what we will do is we're not going to look at the PowerPoint, and instead I will just talk you through it. But as I'm talking you through it, what I would like to, let me just try one more thing and see if we can do it. No, we won't do it. So what I will do is I'll make the PowerPoint available to you later, but the information I can tell you right now. So usually there's a model for burnout, and it's called RI, and it's effort and basically the effort and reward and the imbalance of that. And so what it means is if you're putting in a lot of effort and you're not getting a reward, well, that is the recipe for burnout. But that's very common sense. And so I looked at that and I thought, okay, well, that makes sense. I get that. But actually, there's more to it than just that, because we also have to think in terms of other factors. And so I came up with a model just recently, and it is she or he. And it has nothing to do with gender. It's just a very easy way to remember the words. So SHE or he. Now the S stands for system. Because you know what? It's like there are burnout systems, and we don't actually deal with that. Let me give you an example. And what I would highly invite you to do is, if any of this is resonating with you, can you type in the chat so that we can also get your ideas? For example, universities often have a burnout system, especially for grad students. And what that means is they're going to just throw so much work at them. And then, just far too much work. And so you're just working 24/7 to get this stuff done for your class. And then it makes the university think, okay, well, that means that we're a difficult university. But what it also means is that it doesn't give the students time to think. It doesn't give them time to rebel. And so what you will often find is that burnout systems are put in place in a way that keeps you passive. Now, the tricky part comes when you internalize those systems and you start oppressing yourself with this kind of weird system. And so it's really important to look at that. Another thing also during the pandemic, we've got, CEOs making billions while the people who are doing the work are being laid off and, really suffering, evicted. That is a burnout system. Because you look at this and you think, well, for my effort, what am I actually getting? And if you get angry or frustrated with that, that's not your failure. That's an issue with the system and it has to be addressed. Now, the second thing, so it's she or he. So that was the S. The next one is the H, and that is health. Health is, of course, a really important part of burnout. And, factors such as being stuck inside the house during a pandemic, breathing through masks, well, that's going to impact your ability to, to adapt and to cope and to thrive. And so that has to be included into any burnout solution. And what you might find is that you're engaging in behaviors that are not so helpful anymore. Maybe you're drinking a bit more or something like that. Now, the next one is the environment is incredibly important. And often this is left out of burnout equations. Maybe you've got a wonderful family and everybody loves each other and the system is perfect, but you've been cramped into a small space for, the pandemic. Well, that is a burnout environment. It possibly can be. If you're a nurse working on a COVID unit, well, that is also a burnout environment. And, often people can be part of this burnout environment. People that we love can be really toxic sometimes. And especially during a pandemic, some people are completely focused on things that maybe can be seen as negative. And so it's really important to look at the environment. Now, the thing that for me was the deciding factor was actually the O in the next thing. So she or he, the O is the origin. Because a lot of times we assume that it just came from me and I am responsible for this burnout. But with a revelation that I had this summer, which was kind of crazy for me because I am a psychotherapist, I've studied this stuff, but it finally dawned on me that I have a family that has a lot of intergenerational issues, a lot of intergenerational trauma. And so I grew up trying to fix all of that stuff and, trying to at least make this part better. And I'm guessing that many of you, who are listening can identify with that. When a kid is put into the parent role, then it's kind of hard to know when do you stop that. And so origin, what I mean by that is, what is the background? What is your emotional background? Now, you can go to therapy for many years and deal with that, and that's fantastic. But if you don't have that capacity, you can just look at the facts and think, oh, I get it. This totally makes sense. Now, the next one is reward. Maybe in your company, you've got a boss who doesn't value your work. Maybe you have a colleague who steals your work, things like that. And so that's an example of being in a working situation in which you don't get the rewards that you want or need. However, there's a really important trick to this, and that is the rewards that you give yourself. And this is when substance abuse can actually become an issue. For me, for example, if it's 7 o'clock and I really have to do some kind of boring work and I don't want to do it, but hey, if I have a glass of wine, well, then I can kind of get through it, and maybe another glass of wine. And, so the alcohol becomes the reward for doing the boring work. And so often in cases of burnout, and again, this starts, pretty much in phase 2 or 3, we really start to develop some negative coping behaviors. And what the behaviors do to a large extent is just numb us. It's like, okay, I'm not going to feel this stuff because, I have this thing as the reward, and you can't take this reward away from me. I've heard so many people say, this is the only thing that I have in my life. You can't take this away. But when that thing becomes a way of life, then that's a challenge. And then the last two letters, the one, so we did she or he, and then the next one is the H, and that is for hope. If you're in a situation that you know is short term, okay, this thing is going to finish in a month and then I'm out of here, then, it's easier to adapt. But if you're in a situation that just seems like it's going to go on forever, maybe it's an abusive relationship, maybe it's, oh my God, I lost my job, I don't know how I'm going to make this work. Maybe you're doing caretaking for a person who's ill during the pandemic, whatever. Then when there can be the tendency to lose hope if you feel that it's indefinite. And at that point, that's also another really big trigger for burnout. And then the final one is E for effort. And again, if you put in just a little bit of effort, that's one thing. But if you're just working and working and working, and then nothing happens, you get no reward, well, okay, pretty logically, that's going to not work out. Now, the reason that I really like this model, and because they all interlink, what most burnout methods say is, okay, you totally have to change this and you totally have to change that. But when you're burnt out, you don't have the energy. You are tired, and you just kind of need to do something small that will enable you to get to the bigger steps. And what I love about this model is that if you make a tiny, tiny step, the H, I'm sorry, the H is hope. And hope means that the situation is not indefinite. I was looking at the chat. Yeah, that's fine. And so the thing is, if you make a tiny, tiny step in one of these areas, it totally positively impacts the other areas. And this is what I really like about it. And so I'm going to walk you through how that works. But first of all, I just want to say some things. When you get to your point of saying, okay, I'm going to address my burnout now, there's a really important first step that you have to make. And that is forgive yourself of everything. For everything you did do, for everything you did not do, forgive yourself. It's really, really important, because that will give you the energy to make these very small steps, and also understand other people have been through it and they are going through it and they can support you, at least with information, certainly. So let's walk through these steps in the system. How to deal with stress at work. Yeah, that's exactly it. So let's walk through this. If you can acknowledge that the whole system has a problem, like your university is giving you too much work, or what's happening right now is, for example, at work, people are being laid off, and the people who are staying, who are allowed to keep their jobs, are given too much work. And, here, you get to keep your job, you're welcome, but then they're in this burnout phase. So if you're in a system that is a burnout system, what's really important is to be able to identify that and to understand, it's not me. And also to understand this means that other people are also dealing with that. We can connect. We can talk about it, we can support each other, and maybe ultimately we can change the system. And so that's one really important element of the system. Now, regarding health and reward, those two are really important, primarily because, as we discuss, rewards often are linked to negative health things. If your reward is smoking a lot or drinking a lot, then that's going to impact your health, which is going to impact your sleep, which is going to impact other things. And so what you can do is make a positive change just in the reward thing and say, look, tonight I'm going to take a hot bath and I'm not going to do the alcohol. And then that's going to just scale and positively impact a lot of the other areas. Now, regarding the environment, basically identify anything that you can do to make it better for you. If that means that you go into the bathroom and you listen to music by yourself, then do it. A lot of times overachievers who had this kind of burnout upbringing think that time for me is not, I come last. Everybody else comes first. But on the airplane, they always say, put on your oxygen mask first. It's the same with burnout. You really do need to monitor your energy because it's critically important. And another thing, do set boundaries with people who you feel are being toxic. But another thing that's incredibly important is that in the burnout phase, we often are focused on the future or on the past or what I didn't do or what I need to do. And it's really important to remind yourself, just be here right now. Just be right here. And that will give you the strength to continue. Now, regarding origin, the whole thing about your family, just go back and kind of take the time to look by yourself or with a loved one or with a therapist, whatever. What could be your origins for burnout? Where might this come from? Just look at that and deal with that to the extent that you can, because there's a lot of really helpful information there. Regarding hope, if there is any way, well, just to understand, even if it feels like, oh God, there's no way I can get out of this situation, understand that when you're in burnout, a lot of times your ability to see paths out is limited. And so do what you can to either ask other people that you trust or to put the whole thing that there's no way out for later, and first focus on empowering yourself. So anyway, this is just a brief overview of the whole she or he thing. There will be more information later, but first I really want to go through and look at the comments that you've been leaving and to see some things that we have here. So let us see the systemic model. Yeah, systemic model. So I'm looking at what Lenore said. Systemic model is very, very important. I would agree with you on that. Now, Suad said, how to deal with stress at work, especially during COVID. Now my colleagues are stressed by meeting clients, and that makes me more stressed when I go home. Well, what the truth of the matter is, and I mentioned before that I'm an organizational development consultant. What many people have been saying, and many decision makers, at least over here that I've been in contact with, is that first it was the health crisis, and then it's the financial crisis. And what we will be looking at probably in the beginning of 2021 is the economic crisis. And what that means is that there probably will be a lot of changes in the working environment, even more than there were before. And so if there's any time to learn protective skills to really take care of yourself, it's now, because in some environments, it has just started. And so how to deal with the stress at work? Again, go through the systems that we looked at. Is it part of the system? Is it anything that you can change? How can the environment at work be changed? Are you giving yourself any rewards that are not positively impacting your life or impacting your health? And so I guess what I'm saying is that list that we went through, there are small things that you can go through to make distinctions to protect you, but it's really, really important. And so I'm looking at, Sanyam said, there's a conflict between working really hard versus taking a break. A break feels like being weak and not disciplined enough to stay consistent. Yeah, well, my question is, I would go back to origin. And the thing is, where did you learn that? Where in your life did this come up? Many of us who have burnout do have this belief, but it came from, often it came, I don't know in your experience, but it often comes from a childhood in which you're not supposed to stop. You're not supposed to take a break. That's bad. However, what we find as adults is that it's taking the break that actually leads not only to our better health, but also to creativity and a lot of positive factors. And so I would invite you to look at, in your experience, where did this come from? You know what I mean? So I would like to go up and to see if there's any other, what I would very much like to, oh, okay, Jorge says, oh my God, I just realized the burnout comes from factors like childhood. Yeah, yeah. Down here we have a saying, work, 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 resting is for dead people. Yeah, you know what's interesting, Jorge, is that again, I'm a psychotherapist. I trained in this stuff. I did burnout therapy with people. It took me 20 years to understand that. It's like, oh, these things are connected. And what you'll find is that actually, I mean, they didn't have burnout. They didn't have this word, you know, many, many years ago, or, in the 40s or 50s or whatever. People still experienced it. And so what we to protect ourselves. So thank you so much for making that distinction. Now, and thank you for saying that you're impacted by this presentation. I appreciate that. So I see we've got just a little bit of time, and what I would like to do is to give you 2 invitations. Unfortunately, I cannot do that via the PowerPoint, but I gave a TED Talk in October, in which that was the first time that I put all this stuff together. And the TED Talk it's about mental health in the pandemic. And what I will do is I will put the link to that here. I'm copying it right here. And I would highly encourage you, if there's anything that I've said that is resonating with you, then I would invite you to, please, let me see, I'm trying to leave something here we go. I hope this is working, yeah. Okay, so this is the TED Talk. I hope that's working. It's a to-do list. There should be a break between list and the TED Talk. So please do go and see the TED Talk, and also let me know what you think. Let me know your ideas about it. Now, if you would like to contact me, what I would like to do is to give you, I'm typing in right now my website. And what I also want to do is to let you know what I've decided is starting, because actually I'm an author and I've done many other things before. What I'm going to do is to put on this website starting next week, the middle of next week, is something called Burnout Journey. And what it's going to be, because burnout takes a while to let go of. It isn't something that happens overnight. But I'm going to basically record what I do that works, and I'm going to just put it out there. And so I would highly encourage you, if you're on your own burnout journey, then come and join mine. And again, this doesn't cost anything. All of this stuff is completely free of charge, because I believe from my heart that burnout is going to be a major, major key for us to come back even stronger after the pandemic. And we really do need to do this together. And so if you would like to actually contact me directly, then I'm going to leave it in here. It's Heather and then heatherwokusch.com. It's this website. So all that I can say in closing, because I realize that we have just a little bit of time left, I would like to say some things. First of all, burnout is really serious. It isn't necessary to wait as long as I did and kind of, do the suffering. It's the idea of, oh, it makes me strong if I don't complain. And you know what? It doesn't. What it does is it just perpetuates the problem. And so what will make you strong is actually finding out the key for you. And again, I believe that it comes down to the she for he. What is the system of the burnout? What's going on with your health? What about the environment that you're in? What is the origin? Why are you doing this? Why are you framing things this way? What kind of rewards are you giving yourself or you're not getting from other people, for example? Do you have hope that things can change? And what about the effort? Now, what I can say is everything that I've just discussed here, I'm going to put into a blog that will be available on the website in a couple of days. And so I would encourage you to come visit. I can't thank you enough for having joined. Yeah, and I guess that's about it. Well, and I see. Well, so I'm going to just read this. This is the best way to end. So Jorge says, thank you so much for this 30 minutes of self-caring and relief. I just feel like I drop a ton of sack from my shoulders. God bless you for this. Well, thank you, Jorge, and understand that in this journey, you are not alone. There's a lot of people experiencing this. And the more that we promote healing, the better. So on that note, I can't thank you all enough. Thank you so much. And please do keep in touch. Again, we are together on this journey. So thank you so much. Thank you. Bye-bye.